morning, afternoon and evening, my crazies. My name's Angela and I'm a crazy poppy lady. I'd like to welcome you all to my corner to corner tips and tricks video. Now, some of you will notice that I have been rather cheeky with this one. I have removed tips and tricks from my latest cow, or at least the cow that was the latest when this video also went out. But all tips and tricks on this video will apply to every blanket in the future, or even the ones that are already on the channel. So please remember, there are other blankets on this channel, not just the one that you get to see today, or at least a little teaser of today. Okay, so the patterns that are already on the channel that you could use these tips and tricks to help you out with are the Crazy Cupcake C2C Easy Blanket. Now this one does look really difficult, but out of all of my blankets, this one is the easiest because the squares that you're making for this blanket are not massive and there's not a lot of colour changes. Okay, and you can also start this blanket with just a plain square of so you get used to the stitch and working the stitch before you then move on to the cupcake itself. Now that is hashtag 06. Okay, that is the Crazy Cupcake C2C Easy Blanket. It's got a wickedly gorgeous border on it. Right, the next one up is the unicorn blanket. That seems to be the most popular on the channel, and to be honest, I love seeing them. It is hashtag 09. My next one up was the mystery cow. It was the 2020 Christmas mystery cow, hashtag 10. Now that one's a penguin, and the penguin's wearing a cheeky hat and a cheeky scarf, and that is where I introduce option A's. So if during a video I say, oh, this is an option A colour or an option B colour, it means it's a colour that you're able to change out easily. Right, and then the last one up was the moose, a corner to corner blanket slash playmat. Now the reason it is a blanket slash playmat is because I made it with a DK yarn, like I do with all my blankets, and it was massive, and for me it was already the size of a nice size for a baby playmat. So if you'd up the size of your yarn on that one, you'd have a decent sized playmat. Now that one is the Moose C2C blanket slash playmat, and it is hashtag 14. And of course, in the month of August, we also have the new corner to corner. I'm not spoiling you on that one, just in case I get this video out a little bit earlier. You will get to see some of the colours that we will be using. So keep an eye out on the channel on the Sunday Whips, Bits and Chats videos, and of course on the lives where you will get first sneaky peek at the pattern before it goes live. Now for your tips and tricks. Enjoy! But of course, with my blankets, there's lots of little balls attached to them. So what I'm going to do is show you a couple of styles that I use myself. Right, my first one is the good old caked, which I use my wool winder for. Now normally my cakes are around 15 to 20 grams a pop. Sometimes I'll sneak it down to 10 grams, okay, to keep the ball quite small, but I have noticed that as I work with them, of course you're working from the inside out and they collapse. So I've noticed that this may not be the best method. So the method that I have used this time round is still a centre pull, but it is a centre pull ball, which I have wound up manually myself. Okay, and I'm about to show you how to do that now. Right, so with this ball, it is really good because as long as you don't pull out too much as you're working, or should I say at the end of the section you're working on in that colour, for the most part will just hang on your work like this. So it's very similar to the peg method that some people use. I haven't got any, so I can't show you that method. It's only when it gets down to the last few wraps that it starts to collapse, but by then that's only 2 to 3 squares left. So I'm quite impressed with this little method here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show it to you. how I did this method. Now it is actually attached to my project that I'm working on at the moment, because this was a cake that collapsed, so it's only going to be a small ball, but it's here to give you an idea. Right, so what we do is we will take our yarn, and your working end you hold, the working end you hold with your thumb, and you hold it out the way. Then we just wrap our yarn around 2 fingers, keeping it quite loose. You don't need to strangle your fingers and turn them blue for this method, which is really cool. Okay, so we just wrap it round until you feel comfortable that you've got enough there. Okay, I've not given you a count on how many wraps because it is very individual to you. Okay, and then we loosely, it's all about keeping it loose. Okay, so very loosely wrap around the centre, taking your finger out as you go. Okay, and then I change directions. You don't squidge and you don't pull in. It's still a case of keeping it loose. Don't worry if bit ends stick out and stuff, because as you build the ball up, you will carry on pulling it in and shaping it. Now what I do suggest you do is keep your thumb or your fingers over where the working yarn comes out, so you don't end up tying that into the ball. Oh, I've got the shakes today. Okay, right, so we just keep going round and round and round, changing directions every now and then until you have got enough yarn on your ball. So I'm getting near the end. Okay, so there we go. As you can see, here's the end of my yarn coming up now. And this way you can do little 5-gram balls that or 10 that won't be untangling as you go. Then as you get to the end, all you do is tuck it under a couple of the top yarn layers of yarn, so it is out of your way, and there you have a nice ball to be able to work from. And as you work in, it just pulls out very easily. I have noticed sometimes I might get a little snag, but I just give it a gentle tug and it comes through, and it's just where I've changed directions and maybe caught the road below. But other than that, I've had no major knots come out of any of the balls that I've made so far, and I've had around 20 of them attached at some point to this project that I'm working on now. So I hope this helps you in finding a very nice and very quick and very simple way of having a good amount of balls attached to your yarn that won't run away and leave your table or your work surface that you're working on. Right, on to your next tip and trick. Right, so let's get back going on the pattern. Now the pattern is going to be described to you in American terms, okay? I'm sorry, I learnt in American terms over English terms, but I will tell you what the stitches are if I know them. Right, basically our stitches we are going to need today are a slip knot, a chain, a US double crochet, a UK treble crochet, and I believe that is it. Right, so let's get going with our slip knot. So pop a slip knot on your hook, do it however you like. Make sure you leave enough yarn to be able to sew in your ends at the end of the project. Right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to chain 5. Okay, so once you've got your chain 5, count 3 down from your hook, and into that 3rd stitch you are going to place a US a double crochet, a UK treble crochet. And then we will be placing a double crochet into each of these 2 remaining chain stitches. Right, so once they are done, your block will consist of your starting chain running along the bottom, chain 2 running up the side, and then 3 double crochets. Okay, now for block 2, which is also the first block on row 2, we are going to chain up 5. Now we are going to tilt our work, and having the block that you've just made point downwards, you are going to work into the chain, starting at the 3rd chain from your hook, and pop in a double crochet into that one, and then into chain number 4 you pop a double crochet, and chain number 5 also has a double crochet. And that is how you will be starting every row while we're doing the increases. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to flip our work 180 degrees. So that's that first square, flip it up and around, find your chain 2 hole, stick your hook through the whole thing and pull up a loop and finish off as a slip stitch. Okay, now that is your very first square on your 2nd row done. Now we are going to chain up 2 and place 3 double crochets into the same spot. So that square there has now got 2 double crochets going up and then 3 double crochets worked around the chain 2. Now we're going to start row 3. So for this one you're going to chain up 5 and then work your double crochet into your chain 3 from the hook. Then we're working our 2nd double crochet into the next chain and your final double crochet into the last chain. Now flip your work up 180 degrees and find the gap between the chain 2 and your first double crochet, pop your hook through, pull up a loop and finish it off as a slip stitch. Now we're going to chain up 2, and now we are working on our next square. So each square, remember, has a chain 2 and 3 double crochets in around that chain 2 from the previous row. The only time it changes is for the first and last square. So now we're going to slip stitch into the top of the next square and chain up 2 and add our 3 double crochets. So there you go, and that is rows 1 through to 3 complete. Okay, so carry on that process, increasing on one side, okay, or should I say increasing on the first square of each row until you have 12 rows. Once you have the 12 rows, come back and see me and we will work on to a row 13. Okay, so you're back with me. You have done your 5 squares but haven't joined that 5th square. That's quite important. So if you've done it, quickly undo and set yourself up so that you've got your 5 squares with your 5th one incomplete, as in not slip stitched. Right, now we are going to add our black in. For this I like to add another slip stitch. Some people don't like working with slip stitches. You don't have to, you can do it your way. But the best way I have found to add a colour is to actually add it on the slip stitch. So what I do is I will pop my hook through the work, then I add the black, but I also grab the yarn that I've been working with and I lay that over the top of my hook before I pull it through. So then pulling your second colour through and finishing up as a slip stitch as you would have done with all of the other blocks. Okay, just like that, and then give it a gentle tug so it's nice and tight, that one. And then taking the old yarn that you was working with, do that, pushing that over to one side. I like to actually hold that with my little finger for a few moments. And now we are going to work the black. So as I have mentioned previously, with my black, it is a bit thinner than my other yarns. Now this is quite normal, I've noticed, for Aldi yarn and for Stylecraft as well, which is a bit of a shame. So if you come across this issue, here is the quick trick to rectify it. So you just got to remember to do this for each of your black squares and none of the rest of them. So what we're going to do is we are going to place a 1 double crochet around that chain, and then our second stitch we are going to do a double crochet but only go halfway, so you pull through the first 2 loops. Then you're going to hook over again and go back through, pull up your yarn, hook over and pull through 2. That leaves 3 loops on your hook. Now we're just going to pull over and pull through all 3, so that still counts up the top as 2 double crochets, but it's filled in a bit of the gap. Okay, and then we're going to finish off with another double crochet, and that is it. That is how we extend the black to make it fit the rest of the box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo that quickly up to the chain point and show you it all again. If you don't need it, just skip it. Okay, so here we go. It's a double crochet in, followed by hook over, go through, pull up your yarn, hook over, go through 2 and stop, hook over, go through, hook over, pull up your yarn, hook over, pull through 2 and stop, 3 on your hook, hook over, pull through all 3. Next stitch, another double crochet. Right, so and now we are going to need another white, because the white that we have attached to our work will be working down the bottom section of our pattern. So now to just find my end. Right, so now we are going to do the same method again to join our next yarn on. Okay, so slip knot for me, pop your yarn, your hook through the yarn and pop your slip stitch on. Grab your black yarn, making sure it's tight on the loop is tight on your hook, and pull that over the top of your yarn that you're working. Now pull your loop through all of it, through the slip stitch and slip stitch to close, and there we go. And now we can give that black a little tug, move the black out the way. This is where your strands get a little bit messy. Oh, done it the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so we just pull that black out of the way, hold it out your way so it's not in the way. Now we're going to just chain up 2 and carry on our boxes all the way down the row. So you should now have 7 boxes to complete. I will meet you at the end of the row for the box count. So your box counts for row 13 are, working from the bottom to the top, 5 white, 1 black and 7 white. So to do this one, because we have already worked over it with the slip stitch on the last round, it's brought our yarn in place lovely. So all we're going to do is pop our hook through, okay, of our black to the back. We are then going to grab our white and lay that over the top of our hook like we've done previously. And now we are just going to pull up our black. When you do it, make sure that you pull it so that it is off to one side slightly, so that it is nice and loose and it's running the same length as your previous box. That way it stops the fabric from puckering up. Then of course we do our slip stitch and we move that white out of the way and we carry on our block as normal. Okay, now remember, with my black blocks I'm doing that cheeky little tip that I showed you on my last row, so I'm going to carry on now. Right, so pop your hook through, lay your black over, okay, and then pull up your white, making sure that it's not too tight. Then we are going to finish off our slip stitch, make that bit tight, and then chain up 2 and carry on working your blocks all the way down the rest of this row. Another little tip. Now for this row we are going to be adding in the green, but we are also going to be moving the black up a square. Okay, so we are going to be working over this black the same time we are adding in the green square. Might sound a bit confusing if you've not done it before, but don't worry, it really isn't. So first of all, get your green ready, and now we are going to grab the black, give it a gentle tug so that the stitches are closed from the previous round. Okay, we are now going to pop our hook into the normal gap, laying over the white and the black. Pop your green on the hook and pull that back through the stitch. Okay, and finish off your stitch with a slip knot, pulling that nice and tight. Okay, now we are going to move the white out of the way because we'll be using that on the next row. We are going to find that tail and get that out of the way. Okay, and now I'm working over our black. We are going to make our green block. Okay, now we only needed that one green block, so now we grab our black yarn, pop our hook through, okay, and lay over the green, and then pull up our black. Okay, do our slip stitch. Okay, move our green yarn out of the way, and then do our black block. Now, a question I do get asked quite a bit is, Ange, how on earth do you stop your yarns from tangling up as you work? Now, as you've noticed on the last few rows, my yarns have been getting tangled. But what I actually do is, of course, I have to set up my shop between each row. So that is when I have an ideal opportunity to unravel them. But if I'm not videoing a blanket that I'm making, what I will do is every other row I rotate my work 360 degrees in the opposite direction, and then that normally means that my yarns will then all be in order. Okay, if they're not, then of course I will sit there and gently just move them about until they're sitting back on the table in the order that they need to be. So of course with every other row your yarn gets tangled, but as I said, if you flip it all the way around 360 degrees in the opposite direction, it will untangle them. So here's the cheeky trick. What we're going to do is pull the black, giving it a gentle tug, pop your hook in, moving your white and your black off to one side. We are going to work our green through and then do our slip stitch over those two strands. Okay, then it's a case of tightening up the green and moving those out of the way to carry on going. This will then bring the black up to the next row along with the white. Now we may end up having to cut this off at a later point, but it's a good idea to do this all the way along so that you have a chance of picking it up onto the next row. And as we are at the end of this video, oops, I really should talk about ends. Alright, so let me flip this over so you can see how many we have got here. Right, not too many actually for this time, for this project so far. Ignore that one. That is where I had to add in some yarn. Right, so what I suggest you do is only sew in these ones here at the bottom half of your work. Okay, these first 4. Leave the rest of them because if you sew them in too close to the edge of your work, sometimes it bunches up and it causes more havoc. So this way round, I always leave a minimum of 3 rows of ends, okay, to sew in at the end of the project. So as you're working up your work, keep that count of 3 rows moving with you, so you never sew in those 3 rows, but sew everything else below it. Right, I am going to head off now and sew in these ends. I'm actually going to do what I'm suggesting you do. Makes change for me, isn't it? Right, and as I said, I will see you all really, really soon. Now with this one, we are doing our very first corner. I suggest that you grab yourself a stitch marker to put on the edge so you don't end up getting overzealous and working up and over it like I've done in the past. Alright, so let me just move that about. So this is how your work should be looking at the moment. So our very first block, we are not working up. We are going to be working across these 3 stitches here. Okay, so we're going to turn our work and do a slip stitch into the top of each of those 3 stitches. Making sure you get that very last stitch there. Okay, so it looks like that, just simple slip stitch in the top. Now to start our next block, we are going to chain 2, and the little trick I like to do, which keeps my square nice and tight, is, or should I say nice and neat, is to put my very first stitch in the same place as that last slip stitch. So now we're going to do a double crochet into that space there, and then 2 more around your chain 2. And just like that, and that is your very first square on row 42. Okay, it is that simple and that easy. So what I'm going to do now is rewind the video for you and repeat the section so that you have got another chance to look at it again. So our very first block, we are not working up. We are going to be working across these 3 stitches here. Okay, so we're going to turn our work and do a slip stitch into the top of each of those 3 stitches. Making sure you get that very last stitch there. Okay, so it looks like that, just simple slip stitch in the top. Now to start our next block, we are going to chain 2, and the little trick I like to do, which keeps my square nice and tight, is, or should I say nice and neat, is to put my very first stitch in the same place as that last slip stitch. So now we're going to do a double crochet into that space there, and then 2 more around your chain 2. And just like that. And so now once you've laid your work out, or you lay your work out, you will see that you've got a beautifully turned square here. Now my little tip is to pop a stitch marker around that chain, very first chain 2,
because from this point on you will only work a slip stitch into that chain to join your next square. You will not be adding any double crochets into it, but by doing it like this for this very first square, it normally helps out a little bit, of course, with counting up your squares as well for the row. Right, so as I reminded you to do at the end of your first corner was to place a stitch marker in. This is make sure that you only work a slip stitch here and you don't carry on round. I say it like that because I have done it in the past. So let's get my yarn back on the hook and we can get going. Right, so you'll have finished your last block. Okay, so we will slip stitch into the top of that chain 2, then we are turning our work and we will be running a slip stitch along the top of these first 3 stitches. Keep them quite loose, don't worry too much about your tension there. If you keep them loose, it helps out later on when it comes to putting your border in. Okay, so we've got our 3 stitches going up the side. Now we're going to chain 2 and of course start on the next block for the next row. So to do that one, we place 1 double crochet into the same place where the chain 2 is, where your slip stitch is, and then 2 further double crochets around your chain 2. Again, that is a nice way of keeping your block nice and neat running along the side. Then we slip stitch into the next and you carry on your box count as normal. There is the black. Now the black you would have brought up with the rest alongside your work. So here is a quick tip to keep it neat. Find that loose strand, okay, then pull it up and pull it out. Then of course tuck that behind with the rest of your ends to be sewn in later. That will then mean that it's nice and neat and that block matches the rest. Right, so here we are, I'm back for that very last square. And so I'll just get on with my 3rd double crochet. And then we slip stitch into that square from the previous round, flip our work, and this is it. It's the last 3 of our slip stitches up the side. Now I like to do that so that it means that it keeps it all neat all neat up the side of your work. Okay, and then it is a case of hook over, pull up a decent amount for sewing in, cut off, cut off your yarn, grab that knot and scooch it down, give it a gentle tug, and then it's yet another end, but it's the last end to sew in.
Hello, I hope these little tips and tricks helped you out with your blanket. If you have any more questions or anything that you think I may have missed, please pop it in the description box down below and then I will make video number 2 and link it up there once it's made. Right, I am going to head off now. I will see you all really soon, so please stay in and definitely stay safe and enjoy whichever corner to corner project you're going to be making next.